Good morning, everyone. It is Rollie, and welcome to another Chatting with Wisdom. And I am super excited to be here with Constance Woulard. And so, Constance is a 3-time best-selling author, professional speaker, motivational speaker, mindset life coach, childhood obesity warrior, leadership subject matter expert. And so, today we're going to be talking about the transforming your mindset for personal success. And so, tell me a little bit more about yourself. Constance, how are you?
I am wonderful, and I thank you so much for having me here to speak on a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, and that's childhood obesity. I am a warrior of childhood obesity, and I call myself a warrior because I struggled with this from the age of 3 to the age of 50, but I overcame it.
Beautiful.
I overcame it. And so now I am no longer a victim. I am a warrior. And I want to help others who are undergoing the same struggle to become warriors as well. So that is my passion. That's my passion. I am, well, since we last spoke, I'm now a 5-time best-selling author.
Okay.
Yeah, since the last time we spoke. And what I do is, I realize based upon my own personal struggle, the need for a tribe and a need for an effective support system for children that are undergoing and struggling with childhood obesity. It's a strong need. So what I do is I work with parents and families on how to be effective support systems for that child and how to build a tribe of support. And we're talking anything from communication, how to communicate with them effectively, exercising, group activities, food choices, the whole 9 yards, whatever it takes to be of a support for that child. And so that's what I do. I'm a registered nurse by trade, and that's what I do.
Beautiful. So one of the things that was interesting that you were talking about was being able to connect and having that support system. And so one of the things that I find that I hear often from, and this becomes adults as opposed to children, but like one of the things that I've heard from children or adults who were had childhood obesity, one of the things is that it would be the body shaming. And like, do you address that conversation in the supports that you make with the parents?
Yes, I do. Because what happens is, and I can tell you based upon my own personal experience, you feel like you're alone and you're embarrassed and you want to cover yourself and you don't want anybody to see you because what is visible to the eye, it's already not appealing because you're being teased about it or you're being bullied about it. So you really cover yourselves and you're really embarrassed and shamed to show your body. Mm-hmm. And so I work with families on how to, let's say, if the family's going to the beach and going swimming, how to make that child feel comfortable in that environment.
Yeah.
How to make them feel welcomed. Because that's a big thing. A lot of times we don't feel welcome to be a part of what's going on. So how to make them feel welcome and to feel comfortable within their own skin.
And that's great. And that is so important for us to be able to do as well. And not just the parents, but those of us who are listening, even if we don't have children that have that childhood obesity. And but even just saying things of like, should you take another bite of that? Like, should you really eat that right now? Like, again, those kinds of things are very detrimental to the self-esteem of these children. And
yes.
And then they carry that forward in within their life.
They carry it over into their adult life. And so, even something as small as saying, are you going to eat that? Do you think you should eat that? I mean, there really should be no negative conversation towards the choice that child is making to eat at that time.
Yeah.
That is what I call a sidebar conversation. And even then it should be managed delicately. Yeah. Discuss some, well, hey, let's discuss some options. I noticed at dinner you ate this. Let's talk about some options, some better options that maybe you could have chosen. Yeah. And just kind of do it one-on-one. Don't address it out in the group because that is so detrimental and so just hard on that child's emotional stability. It's embarrassing.
Yep.
Because they're already embarrassed about their weight. So why add fuel to the fire?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So one of the things that, so how do you approach that? Like, so do you approach it from a nutritional perspective, or like a portion perspective? Like, how do you address that? Like, because you're talking about it delicately. So like, how do you do that delicately?
Well, first of all, it's the communication. How to communicate with that child in a delicate manner, in a manner that will not destroy their ego or kill their spirit. That's the first focus. If you kill their spirit, everything else you say is going to be out of the window. They're not going to listen to anything that you have to say about portion control. They're not going to listen to anything that you may say about food choices. It's all about that effective communication, that gentle communication, not destroying that person's ego or their spirit. And if that takes place, then that child will be more receptive and feel more comfortable to listen to what you have to say. So you address it from that point of view. You also address it from a nutritional status. And you also address it from portion control, because that is the key right there, is portion control. But you have to establish that effective communication system first. It's so important.
Because there's so much information about, because I love the way that you're actually talking about portion control. So I know that there's a lot of like restrictive changes. So like taking things away. And so like we just finished trick-or-treating, for example. So so the kids want to be able to eat their trick-or-treat, like their trick-or-treats. They want to be able to eat that not so great healthy food. Same as those of us who are adults still want to be able to have some of those. Right. So, but being able to having how to be able to portion it differently and being able to eat so many each week or in a day or whatever, however it is that you want to be able to portion it, but giving them those, so if you're going to have one of those small bag of chips, then you have your carrots and your celery and you have your whatever, so that you have that nutrition that can kind of offset and balance. Is that the kind of things that you're making reference to?
Yes, I do. And you also have to be able to incorporate everything into the diet, because listen, when you have become accustomed to eating at leisure, all these things, you're not going to be able to give it up overnight.
No.
And in order for us to sustain the weight loss after we lose it, we have to be able to manage those things in our diet, because they're there and they're not going away. Society is not going to stop making these things because we don't want to gain weight.
Yeah.
So it's learning how to manage things, like the Halloween candy. Most of them are like the little one-size servings anyway, like the little miniature Snicker bars or the little small box of Gobsters or whatever it may be. Okay, just let the child know that, hey, you can have this. It's okay, but we're going to have to learn to limit. So maybe instead of you eating 4 or 5 miniature Snickers, let's take 1. Or maybe we can take 2. Maybe you can have 1 at lunch. Learn to savor the taste of things. Cut that little miniature candy bar into 4 cubes and just spread it out throughout the day. Learn to savor the taste of things. Okay? Because if a diet is too restrictive, and I can tell you from my own personal experience, I do not like to be restricted. So that's why I had to really focus on the portion control, because I like to eat and I like good stuff and I love junk. I'm just going to be honest with you. I love junk. That desire is not going to go away. That's just me, how I'm made. But I had to learn how to manage that desire for those junk foods. So I had to really focus on the portion control. So I know, for instance, when I first started my journey, we would go out to dinner, my son and I, we'd buy 1 dessert and cut it in half. And we'd share that 1 dessert instead of when we used to buy 2 desserts. And sometimes we'd buy 4 because we'd take another one home, a piece to have later on. We'd buy 1 and half in it, and we would enjoy that. And then we got to a point where we were able to take that 1 dessert and cut it into 4s. So we ate 1/2, we shared a half at the restaurant, and we took the other half home and shared it later. So it's all about behavior modification and learning alternative methods. Yes, you can have these things, but you have to learn how to manage your portions, because that's where the success is going to come. And if you restrict the diet, I mean, I like carrots too. I don't want carrots for a snack every day. I'm sorry.
I don't ever want carrots. I don't like carrots.
You know, and that child is not either. And me personally, I just can't eat plain carrots. I used to when I was a kid, but now I got to add some ranch dressing or something to it. I need some excitement.
Yeah.
So we have to really work on healthy alternatives and options and portion control. That is the key. That's what needs to be reinforced with the children and the families.
And being able to model that behavior, right? So I know that there are some families, and again, I've worked with a lot of teens or younger adults who've said, well, yeah, but like I wasn't allowed to have the chips because like they were telling me that I wasn't allowed to eat the chips, but yet they would sit there and they would eat the bag of chips watching a movie and I wasn't allowed to have any. And so modeling the behavior and having that those changes, I think, is also important as part of the adults in.
That's what I mean when I say the need for a tribe. You know, it takes a tribe. You know, I can tell you for myself when I used to diet in my younger days. And so my mother says, okay, so what we're going to do is, because, you know, I grew up on the Gulf Coast, we had fresh seafood every day. So I love fresh seafood to this day. I love fried fish. You know, I'll eat broiled fish, but I'm not a fan of it. I want my fish fried. And so we had dinner that night, and my mother broiled my little fish, and it was very good. I mean, she seasoned it very well. It was good, and baked my potato. But then she and my dad are sitting at the same table with me with fried fish and fried potatoes. And I'm like, really, guys? You're going to sit here and eat this in front of me knowing that that's what I really desire? Yeah. So that's why it's important to have that tribe. So maybe one day of the week, the family has a free-for-all. You know, if it's pizza that everybody likes, okay, pizza's gonna be it, but it would be for everybody, even that child who's dieting. But during the week, we're gonna all eat the same thing. Yeah, the same thing. It takes a tribe. So you know, and the tribe may feel that they don't need it, but you need to express to them, yes, they do, because if they fall into the same trap, they will be right where that sibling is that's struggling. Yeah. And then for health reasons, nutritional reasons, they need to follow a better diet plan. So it really takes that tribe to provide that support. And that's with activities. And that's with meal times. You know, everybody needs to be on the same page.
But it also includes that it has that inclusion, right? So like they're already feeling isolated. So like you use the example of going to the beach and like needing to cover up with a shirt. And so like being able to like sitting at the dinner table and everybody eating the same thing. Or so like if you like we just came out of summer and so like you're going down to the beach area and then of course there's like the chip stand and whatever that's close by to the I've yet to see a beach that does not have a chip stand close by. But so you can go and everybody can like you can order one and then share with the group of everybody who's there, right? So that you can exactly that and enjoy that and going to a fair and so having the cotton candy, like instead of everybody buying one cotton candy, being able to share that cotton candy with everybody and being able to have like as a family doing those kinds of things together as a family, because like you said, it's that tribe of connections. And so like if you have and so even for those who have their peers, right? So like if you have peers that are trying to figure out what to be able to do or how to be able to make changes and being able to feel comfortable enough to be able to have that connection because your friends are there to support you and they too will actually follow the same kinds of, they will sit at the dinner table or the lunch table with you with their portion sizes and their changes and that kind of thing, so that you can actually have that opportunity to be able to share and have that connection. That is so true. You know, and just it takes creativity. So when I say the tribe, everybody in the tribe, you know, you're going to collaborate and talk about, okay, well, we're going to do this. So I would say on Monday, let's have this. Give everybody some ideas on how we can do things. You know, maybe somebody can say, well, okay, well, Wednesday we'll all get together and we'll take a family hike. Or we'll go roller skating or whatever. And that inclusion
That's key. That's going to really help that child and make that child feel so supportive. And then too, it's going to improve the family dynamic.
Yeah.
It really will improve that family dynamic because for once, you're really functioning as a collective unit and sharing ideas and your creativity and working to help that peer that needs or that sibling that needs your help. Yeah. So it's going to really improve that family dynamic. So inclusion is very important. I agree with you on that. And you're right. I have yet to go on a beach except for once. During the pandemic, I went to Cape Cod and all little chip stands were closed.
But only because of the pandemic, not because of anything else. Right. So, but being able to, and one of the things that I thought that was really interesting, because we've been talking about food and nutrition and portion control, but you just mentioned about that physical activity, right? That is another one of those, being able to change our habits and changing the way that we do things. And so going on that hike. And so and again, depends on the person, but that the one that is obese may have more difficulty being able to climb or doing certain activities because of the different things. But even just having something as simple as going on that hike and it's the middle of summer, and I know that we're moving into winter at this point, but it's the middle of summer, but then you've also got the chafing happening, right? So like, what are some of the things that you can be doing to make sure that they're taking enough breaks in between, making sure that everybody's wearing like the most comfortable pants as possible so that you can try and eliminate some of those different things as well. And I think that is extremely important. And so being able to have that conversation about how do we do this? What is it that's going to happen? And like, I love the idea of like, okay, let's sit down on Monday and figure out what's the plan, right? So what's the plan? And everybody comes together and has that conversation. Apparently I'm having trouble with my shirt. There it is. I'm like trying to pull
I am
it
too.
down.
Mine is lopsided this morning. I don't know why, but anyway.
Well, and I was trying to pull it down and I'm like, okay, but I'm looking in the camera, so I guess I'm reversed.
I just gave up on mine because like the more I pull it, the more lopsided it looks. So I said, forget it. Forget it.
So, but being able to have that conversation about how to, having that conversation, what are we going to do and how are we going to do that, and doing that brainstorming. And one of the techniques that I use with my clients, and especially those who have children, like if we're doing some parenting things, is in terms of that brainstorming, and I use it with adults as well, but like when that brainstorming is, there's no answer that's the wrong answer when you're brainstorming. So like, it's just throw out the ideas, and it doesn't matter how crazy it seems, because that one crazy idea might be something that you can tweak a little bit to make it so that it actually is functional.
Exactly.
And so, because then you can potentially piggyback on that crazy idea that makes it fun as well, right? So, but it gives that idea of what it is that we can be doing as to how we can actually kind of make things going forward. The other thing that I think that, and this is probably other things that you do as well, but one of the other things that I'm just thinking about is like being able to do choices, right? So, so I liked how you were actually talking about when you actually talked about the Snickers bars and cutting them in half, like in fours, and being able to savor them, but like being able to have that option. Right. So like, which ones of these do you want to have? Do you want to have chocolate or do you want to have the Gobsters? Right.
Yes.
So what is it that you want to be able to have so that it gives you that opportunity? And like, how long can you actually, like a lot of times we have, and it's something that still happens with my mom, and I have to correct her when we have little ones around. It's like, who can eat fastest? It's like, no, we're not eating faster. Who can eat the slowest?
Right. Exactly.
Right?
And that is so important.
Right? We need to chew so that food. All right. We need to eat that food, and we need to digest that food, and we need to absorb it, and like getting it into our digestive system so that we can, and not cleaning off our plate. Right. So that's another thing, is that about not having to clean off our plate, and being able to have so much on your portion. And if they do, that's perfect. But I don't know, like growing up, I didn't have childhood obesity when I grew up. So for me, it wasn't an issue, but I did have other family members that would have more challenges around that. And so, but it's like, you need to eat everything off your plate. Well, if you're not hungry, then why are you going to keep eating? Like, why are you going to keep stuffing that food, right? So those kind of challenges and making those kind of changes, like that makes things a lot easier. Like I know my husband was raised in like, don't be wasteful, right? So, but then you don't put large portions on your plate, you put smaller portions on your plate. And then you go back for seconds if you need a little bit more or whatever. But it's like, if it's not all eaten, it's not the end of the world. And in some cultures,
Exactly.
if you don't eat everything, that's an indication to the chef, right? So,
Exactly.
or compliment to the
Exactly.
chef.
So, it's just a lot of things that has to be worked on. The family dynamic itself, the inclusion piece with that child, and just help them to understand, especially the child, because I know for me, when you're overweight, you just want that weight gone.
Yeah.
It's going to take time. It's a process. You didn't gain it all overnight, and it's not going to leave overnight. So really stressing that it's a process. Time is involved. There's going to be days that you fall off of the wagon.
Yep.
That's okay. Don't beat yourself up. There's always room, the next opportunity to improve. Don't beat yourself up.
And when you fall off that wagon, it doesn't mean that you have to fall off the wagon for the entire day either. So if you fell off that wagon for that one meal or that one snack or that one indulgence that you just couldn't resist for whatever reason, it doesn't mean you have to throw your entire day away.
Exactly. And sometimes, I know for me, sometimes, I was, oh gosh, I want this so bad. I'm going to go ahead and do it. And then after I went and got it, it wasn't even good anymore. This was not that same experience that it was before I started with the dieting.
Yeah.
And so I would eat. I'm like, well, golly, that wasn't. I'll never forget. I think it was a Wendy's burger. Just a plain Wendy's burger. I used to love those. And I'm like, man, I wish I could. I said, I'm going to go ahead today for lunch. I'm going to have it. And I got the burger. And I didn't even enjoy it. And it was such a letdown. I'm like, so I cheated for nothing. Okay.
It didn't even get that savory tasting like
it didn't even taste the same. And I think it's because I had gone so long without eating that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I
think that's what it was. And it's just like, I got it. It was no big deal. And I can tell you, I have not been back to Wendy's since. It's just understanding, you can't beat yourself up about things. It's a process. It's a mind-changing process.
Yeah.
But if you stick to the process, that evolution within your mindset will occur. It will occur. And then you will think more to make better choices of what you have to eat. And then once that child is able to see the results, oh my gosh. Once they are able to see the results and the family sees the results and they're complimenting them and say, well, look at you. That's going to be a game changer right there. They're not going to want to go back to the bad habits because they're going to be so pleased with the positive reinforcement that they're giving, the change in their appearance. They're going to be so pleased with that. And so they will really work hard not to go back to those old habits.
And one of the things that I think is also really important for us to, because you were talking about like people commenting on the change and having those kinds of things, but also making sure that there's not too much emphasis on that physical outer body change as well, because I've seen it happen where you've gone from childhood obesity to then you have you go to the other extreme of the eating disorders and end up anorexic or bulimic. And so really important that there's that balance and being able to shift that way as well. So again, it's like that delicate balance that you were talking about right at the beginning is like, there's just you have to be cautious as to how we talk about it and not put all that physical, all that emphasis on the physical, on our physical being. Like obviously our physical being is really important, but somebody who has naturally wider hips are going to have wider hips no matter how much weight
they lose. Exactly.
Right. So
exactly.
And that's so important for us to not put that emphasis on that physical body, because it's like it's the healthier body. Right. Mm-hmm. So like it's that body mass. It is that the muscle mass and being able to have that healthiness and that kind of thing that is actually would make a lot more difference than and like you said, like even with the families being able to have that. So one of the things that I noticed that you talk a lot about and in the approaches that you use is that you use mindfulness. Right. So you take the mindfulness approaches with with being able to change mindset. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
I use that approach because scripture teaches us that we are transformed by the renewing of our minds.
Okay.
We cannot make a change or evolve the way we should until we renew our mind and our thoughts. And so that's the approach that I use with this. So yeah, that's very important. And again, because if someone can manipulate your mind, okay, they can make you think all kind of things.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important for this child that's struggling with the obesity, and with the family as well. It's when they're getting ready to support this child that there's a change in that mindset. It has to be, hey, we all going to make this change. We all cannot eat the way that we've been eating. Okay. Because if the child is struggling with the obesity, has bad eating habits, guess what? That whole family does too.
Yeah.
So there needs to be a renewing of everyone's mind related to food, the purpose of food, the nutritional value of food, and how to manage portions. It's just it's gonna have to take place with everybody in that whole family. So yes, I use that mindset all the time because that is key and major in everything that we do in life. You have to go through a renewing process of ideas and thoughts in your mind in order to be successful at certain things.
So when you work with your clients, do you work with your clients as as adults, or do you work with them as youth?
As youth?
Yeah. Do you work with them as children and youth, or is it like, are your clients children and youth, or are they?
I have some that are youth. They're like age 7 and 8. Okay.
Yep.
But I work with the families. And so I give one-on-one time to like the family that's being the support system, one-on-one to the child. Okay. But they both have access to me, like they email me and says, hey, what about this? Or to text me and say, hey, we're trying to decide, which is best, a better food choice, things like that. But it's very important to work with that child. Because again, inclusion. Yeah. Make them feel that they are important. Because I can tell you, sometimes you feel alone because there's no one, you feel you're the only one that's experiencing this. And you get beat down. And you need that buddy. You need that extra push. So I like to give a lot of one-on-one time to that child. Says, hey, you're in this, but it's not the end of the world. You're not alone. There's help on the way. You can overcome this. I overcame this. And I really stress my story, and I start back with them from my experience at age 3. And just a progression. Because 9 times out of 10, the same thing is happening with them. Yeah. So a similar situation is happening with them because of their weight. So I do a lot of one-on-one time with the child, but I also stress a lot with the families because the families can be more of a hindrance than a help sometimes. So I really have to work with them and to get their mind shaped to do this and to be that effective support system.
Beautiful. So, so in the description of wherever it is that you are viewing this, there is links for you to be able to connect with Constance. So, is there anything that you wanted to end by sharing before we move on today?
Yes. For anyone, child or an adult, that's struggling with obesity, you too can overcome this. You're not alone. There's 19 million children in the United States alone from the ages of 3 to 12 that are struggling with obesity. And what happens is obese children turn into obese adults. And so if you're struggling with this, I urge you to connect with me on social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram at Anointed Educator. My website is www.constancewoulard.com. Reach out to me, let's connect, and let's make some steps to help you become a warrior as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And if you have any questions or if you have anything that you would be able to add into the discussion, please definitely comment in the description. And thanks again, Constance, for joining us today.
And thank you again for having me. Thank you so much.